A recent Gallup poll reports that for the first time, most Americans want to become entrepreneurs. Now, I believe this desire comes at an early age, but how do parents raise their children to nurture this desire so they have the right traits to succeed? Let's have ourselves a pocket sized pep talk because the traditional approach of pushing for what parents think will make their children successful results in young people becoming discouraged and unhappy. And we need to address this, and we will.
A Pocket Sized Pep Talk, the podcast that can help energize your business and your life with a quick, inspiring message. Now, here's your host, Rob Jolles.
Today's guest, Margot Bisnell, spent 20 years in government, including as an FTC commissioner and staff director of the President's Council of Economic Advisors. She served as an advisor to an after-school program that gives children the skills to succeed, on an advisory board that prepares young people to live consciously through passion-based learning, and for the last 10 years, she's spoken to parent groups about raising creative, confident, resilient children who achieve their dreams. Her new book is Raising an Entrepreneur: How to Help Your Children Achieve Their Dreams, 99 Stories from Families Who Did. Happy to have you with us, and welcome to the show, Margot.
Thanks, Rob. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, well, that's the perfect way to come in. And it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to see you. So we're going to dive right in. I want to start with those interviews you conducted, and 70 entrepreneurs or so and their parents to learn how to raise an entrepreneur. Did you notice any kind of recurring themes that you were able to discover?
Yes, actually, I did.
Perhaps that's why you're here. Let's hear them.
Perhaps that's why I'm here. It actually came as kind of a surprise to me. I picked this hugely diverse group, half men, half women, every race, every socioeconomic background, every religion, big families, small families, born in the US, born overseas, small towns, big cities, parents still married, single moms, blended families. And people going into for-profits, nonprofits, artists, activists, because for me, an entrepreneur is anyone who starts anything. So, completely diverse inputs, completely diverse outputs. And I wondered if I'd find any common themes. And I was just shocked, actually. They were basically all raised the same.
Keep going. I mean, how were they raised?
So every one of these entrepreneurs had a passion outside of school when they were growing up. And every one of their parents supported this passion. And in many cases, the parents didn't understand the passion, or it was like kind of a big gulp. At first, it wasn't something they were enthusiastic about, but every one of these parents, when they saw the joy their child was getting from it, when they saw how hard their child was working, when they saw the success their child was having in the thing their child had chosen, every one of these parents said, "We're so proud of you for your success in that. And we know that if you work that hard at anything in your life, that you can be successful."
Okay, and what kind of age are we talking about here? Because I'm going to zone in on a kid I know real well, my son. All right, so what age are we talking about? 5, 7, 9, all of them? Where are we?
You mean how old?
When these parents began to really nurture this idea, were you looking at an age group, or what about a 17-year-old with an entrepreneurial spirit from a family that wants them to be a financial advisor? That's where I'm coming in. At 5 or 6, you can be a fireman. You could be a basketball player. Why would I step on that dream? When you're 15 and you're 5'3" and you want to be a basketball player, I still have no right to step on that dream. But I could see myself being a little bit more careless. That's why I'm curious about the age, if that was even part of the study.
So I talked to entrepreneurs who were in their 20s, 30s, 40s, and asked them how they were raised.
Okay.
And they talked about their youth. Some of them had a passion in elementary school. Some of them didn't have a passion until middle school or high school. A lot of them, their passion evolved over time. They had one passion and then they had a different passion and then they had another passion. Very few of them their passion was selling something. Very few of them were actually entrepreneurs when they were little kids. I think there were two of them who had lemonade stands.
Okay.
But they all developed the skills, as you were saying, Rob, they all developed the skills to succeed because they had found something they loved that they were working at really, really hard.
Yeah.
And all of their parents, even though I'm telling you, it was, like a big gulp for a lot of parents. When they finally realized that this was something their kid loved, they said, "We're really proud of you for how hard you're working at this." And the number one thing is, when I talk to groups and I say, every one of these parents believed in their child. And they're like, "Come on, Margot, every parent believes in their child." And I'm like, no, every parent wants their child to be successful. Every parent wants their child to be happy. But many, many parents believe if their child does the thing that gives them joy, they can't make a living. So they say, yes, you can take music lessons in high school, but in college, you have to major in something useful. Or the example you just gave me, you can do that entrepreneurial stuff on the side, but you need to study because you need to go into finance if you want to make a living. These are not parents who believe in their child.
Right.
And even though the kids didn't end up basically doing what their passion was when they were growing up, they had developed the skills and they had the confidence to be successful.
Yeah. Well, so by the way, I'm 100% behind you, but I'm going to represent the group that struggles with this because I
Okay.
struggled with this.
Of course,
Exactly.
we all struggled with this.
Yeah, you hit it right on the nose. Here I had a son who was going to NYU, and the first step was want to be a theater major. Well, now slow down here. What are we double majoring in? What are we backing this up with? Was my first instinct when he graduated and said, I want to be a comedian. I said, well, already you've told a good joke. Very funny. Really? And I struggled. I pushed back, but Margot, I learned. And that's why I really wanted to get you to have this conversation because we're going to learn one way or the other. And so in a sense, to shorten the learning curve for others. And I love my son, and he's 12 years as a stand-up comic. He does just beautifully. Most importantly, he's happy. He loves what he does. Just what you said. That's not instinctive for the parent. That's instinctive for the kid. So to shorten the learning curve, uh, tell people why letting these children choose that passion is the right move. I learned it a little, it took a while for me. Help people get there a little bit faster. Why is that the right call?
So I love this story because it is hard sometimes for parents. You're like, you want to be a comedian?
Yeah, just what I
And
had dreamt.
but
Yes.
the problem is for all the parents who didn't end up being supportive. You look around today, teen unhappiness is at an all-time high.
Hmm.
There's so many kids today who are so miserable. They're taking drugs, they're doing self-harm, they're depressed, all this serious mental, stuff. And it's because they're being forced to do stuff that they hate. And it's because they're being forced to spend time learning stuff they're not interested in learning. It's because their parents have shown that they're not interested or supportive in promoting the thing that the kid loves. It's like, stop wasting so much time sewing or painting or acting or singing or dancing or being a comedian or building things or fixing things or playing with cars or playing video games or whatever it is the kid loves. You stop doing that and go study your history or your trigonometry or whatever,
Yeah.
because that's what you're going to need to be successful. No, let them do it. Like so many of the people that I interviewed, they finally found something they loved. And once their parents took that big gulp, just like you did, Rob, once you got over the big gulp, And the parents said, go for it. We believe in you, and we want you to be happy. And we know that you can be successful at anything you work hard at. And we're here for the setbacks. We know there will be setbacks. Nobody does everything perfectly. Nobody succeeds the first time. And you'll figure it out. And we're here for you.
Yeah, I agree. And maybe this is part of it. I think that our instinct is to try and spare our children from defeat, spare our children from the pain of losing. I coached many, many teams, over 50 basketball teams, and I bumped head with parents who didn't want their children even concerned about competing and possibly losing. So I know you have a different opinion on this. Why is it important to let children compete? I believe that. Tell people why we can't be afraid to let them skin their knees now and then.
So that's one of the key themes of my book, actually, Rob. And
I'm living your book, by the way. You notice I'm in every chapter at this point. So, but I'm so thoroughly enjoying the conversation. Keep going. I'm taking notes.
So, except for the artists, every single one of the entrepreneurs in this book were doing something where they were competing. Even the artists, of course, they were trying out for plays or submitting, pictures to juried things or whatever. But aside from the artists who really, in a sense, are more just improving their craft, every single one of them did something where they were competing. To my amazement, almost half of them, maybe 40% or something, were doing sports at an elite level. And none of them does anything in sports today. But I mean, this person was playing basketball at Brown, and this person was playing soccer at Cornell. And, on and on and on. And it was almost sort of embarrassing for me. I'd interview someone, and then at the end I'd say, by the way, did you do something with sports growing up? And they'd, oh yeah, I was on the Olympic development team for skiing. Oh yeah, I was the national equestrian champion. I was afraid I'd have to say you have to do sports to become an entrepreneur, which obviously isn't true. But every one of them talked about the importance of learning to fail. Every one of them talked about the importance of learning to take risks. I love the Billie Jean King quote, we don't call it failure, we call it feedback. And I have so many quotes in here of people saying, like, part of the problem with American kids growing up today is their parents don't want them to fail. Right. And every one of the parents in this book, they never punished their kids for failing. They never praised their kids for success as opposed to how hard they'd worked. And they always said, okay, it didn't work out for you this time. What did you learn? What will you do differently next time? Because they taught their kids that failure was a learning experience, and it's only through failure that you learn and grow.
Yeah. I've always wanted to write a book called Instinct versus Logic. Everything you say is logical, Margot, but it's not instinctive. That's why we need voices like yours and to help us, because I can't imagine anybody who's walking a dog right now going, that doesn't make any sense. Of course it makes sense. The book's called Raising an Entrepreneur, How to Help Your Children Achieve Their Dreams. 99 stories from the families who did. How's the book doing?
It's doing okay.
Well, we want to make it do better than okay. We got to get that book out there. We need people that's on Amazon. Jump on there, grab that book, and don't forget to write a review on that book. It's an important book. Again, not because this isn't logical, because it isn't instinctive. Right down to what you're talking about, competition. You know how many times I had to, particularly when I had so many teams, but when I had the little ones, not at 5 years old, but at 7 years old, to rush the team that just got their knocked down and lost, to rush to the field and make sure we get ice cream and a burger and not talk about what we just learned. And every season when I'd get to a certain age, I go, okay, parents to the left, children to the right. I'll be with each one in a moment, because I had to explain to the parents, love that quote of yours. We want some feedback right now. We're not leaving the field discouraged. whether we win or lose, we're going to learn something from this field today, and that's how we're going to get and evolve and get and not be so fearful about losing, and not be so obsessed about winning. Love the part that you just mentioned with the parents who weren't as concerned were concerned about or interested in the effort and that went in, as opposed to how much money they made on the lemonade stand. But again, not instinctive, you know. So it's important. Go ahead.
No, Roger, I don't know if you heard the Roger Federer speech he just gave to the Dartmouth graduating class in
No, but I
May.
saw his documentary and I find him very interesting.
So at the commencement address, he said, even though I won 80% of my games, I lost 50% of my points that I played in matches.
Huh.
And he said, people who obsess over losing, they're always looking backwards.
Right.
And it's not good. And he was telling the Dartmouth grads, like, don't worry about the mistakes you made. Don't worry. Even the best tennis player of all time lost half his points in
Yeah.
matches. I mean, it's really, really important for parents to understand this and not, be upset that their kid didn't make the home run or kick the field goal or whatever, but just to say, like, what did you learn from it? What will you do next time? How can you be better? And the whole thing about the growth mindset, like they've done lots of studies that parents who praise their kids for who they are, like you're so attractive or you're so smart or you're so talented, those kids don't do anywhere near as well as kids whose parents said, you're working so hard, you're getting better.
Yeah. Well, that's more certainly more inspiring and something that I can control. I can't
Right.
control, how well I look. I will do the best we can, but I really appreciate that. And Margot, as a guy who's 31 years as an entrepreneur, professional speaker, and 10 years with Xerox, I've taken to the stage, thousands of times. Just to, I'd like to think I'm an unconscious competent in what you're saying because many, many years ago, I've lost sight of how well did you do? I mean, how did you knock that audience on its ear? That's what everybody wants to hear from me when I finish. What they'll hear from me is, uh, I was really pleased with what I was able to do. I can't control the audience all the time.
Right.
Not knock against the Midwest, but they're lower reactors. And so I can't control. What I can control, sorry to be corny, is my effort. But that's what I grade myself on: effort, energy, enthusiasm, all within my control. By the way, uh, how the audience responded, not in my control. And just 10 more seconds, 20 more seconds on that. But a lot of times I'll start with a movie clip. A lot of times, sometimes Tommy Boy. It's a can't miss clip. But that clip never takes a day off. Its performance is exact. And yet some audiences will fall out of their chairs laughing. Sometimes you can hear a pin drop. I just took a temperature read of that audience. And again, a lot of times, what do? We internalize and go, that was my fault. No, my fault is that my effort isn't there. And I'm just giving you the inside of an entrepreneur who's judged all the time. I don't mind being judged, but I know how I judge me.
Perfect.
I can go to one of your training classes. I'll sit with the kids in the back there. But you know, the old saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Uh, so a lot of people, I think they sort of settle into their ways of raising children. Why do you think it's important to encourage children to be curious, and want to be problem solvers? I know that seems rather obvious. I just don't find that, again, rather instinctive. We almost want to take the road that's easiest traveled. Maybe that's the instinct. Why do we want to encourage them to take a different road when we know one road will lead to, we can pretty much guarantee a level of success on?
Well, first of all, I don't know that you can guarantee that level of success anymore.
Hmm.
Um, and second of all, I don't know that you can guarantee a level of happiness with that route anymore.
Right.
Um, and it's just, I think even if your kid doesn't become an entrepreneur, being more entrepreneurial will help them in whatever they do. Teaching your child to be curious, teaching your child to ask questions, teaching your child, how can I make this better? Could this be done in a different way? Teaching your child not to be satisfied with the status quo is going to make them better no matter what they do, whether they're working at Xerox, whether they're teaching school, whether whatever they're doing, whether they're an entrepreneur or not. Something that was really interesting to me, of the 70 entrepreneurs, there were only 5 who had a second entrepreneur in their family, a second sibling who became an entrepreneur. And in all 5 of these cases, they had a third sibling who was not an entrepreneur. So the point is, you can't make your child an entrepreneur any more than you can make them a comedian or a doctor or an incredible investment banker. All you can do is give them the skills, give them the traits, give them the understanding, give them the way to live their life. And if they're more curious, if they're more risk-taking, if they're asking questions about how to do things better, maybe they'll become an entrepreneur, and maybe they'll just be better at whatever they end up doing. Not everyone, as I'm sure you know, wants to be an entrepreneur. It's hard work. It's risky. That's
the big one, Margot. It's risky. Everybody likes being an entrepreneur when they're having a good year. When
right.
you're a professional speaker and a pandemic hits, all of a sudden, maybe I should have worked for the government. But yeah, it's risky.
It's risky, and not everyone wants to take on that much risk, and not everyone wants to work that hard with an uncertain financial promise. And it's not the life for everyone, but that's sort of not the point. The point is that it's important for parents to realize that it's an option and it's a path that their child may want to go down. And if their child does want to go down that path, it's a good path.
Yeah.
And they should be supportive. And like you're saying, like, they may start out starting their own business and then end up deciding they want to work for somebody else. And that's okay also. I was giving a talk, and afterwards a parent came up to me. I think he worked at IBM, and he said, "Can I talk to you?" I'm like, "Of course." And he was distraught. He said, "My son started this little widget company in his dorm room in college, and I think it's stupid. And he just announced he wants to drop out of college and move home and work on this little widget company. And I'm so upset I haven't talked to him for 3 weeks." And I called this guy over, Craig Clemens, who I know well, and who I knew had made like $1 gazillion and who I knew hadn't graduated from college. I said, "Craig, let me ask you a question. You have a choice of hiring 2 different people. One of them started a company, worked at it really, really hard for a few years, ultimately decided, he really needed to get more experience and he wants to work for a bigger company until he does. The second one stayed in college, wasn't motivated, didn't get particularly good grades in anything, but he graduated. Which one do you want to hire?" And without blinking, Craig said, "Well, the first one, and so do the other 100 entrepreneurs in this room."
How did the other individual handle that? Did he?
Dad was so grateful, and he wrote me like a couple of weeks later and said, "Thank you."
Right. Have you ever tracked that young entrepreneur that came home?
No, but I should write the dad and ask him.
Yeah, you should get an update on that.
But the point is
Go
that
ahead.
it's not like there's a right or wrong answer.
Yeah,
It's not
right.
like if his company fails, the kid did the wrong thing by pursuing this company. The kid's learning, the kid's growing, the kid's
Right.
discovering what he's good at, the kid's discovering what he likes, the kid's
Right.
discovering how he wants to spend his time. Whether the company succeeds or fails is irrelevant,
Right.
because this kid is learning and growing, and he'll be better at the next thing he does.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I had remember I was leaving a job at Xerox. I was a pretty successful career at Xerox and kind of fast tracked within the company. And when I went to both my father and father-in-law and said, "I'm gonna leave and be a professional speaker," what, you have a year's worth of gigs? No, I got one company that kind of likes me, maybe. They were not all that happy, but what I said, maybe this was my mantra. And so I'm going to come to you from an entrepreneurial angle on this one as a mantra. I explained to them both. I said, listen, this is an itch I have to scratch. And if I don't scratch this itch, if I go out and I fail, I scratch the itch. I'll go back to work for Xerox or Schmerox or somebody else. That I know I can do. But if
Right.
I don't do this now, at some point, I'm going to spend the rest of my life thinking, I wonder if I had the courage to do that. So I need you behind me, at least emotionally. And they both quieted down. And my dad was very old school. The moment my income began to rise, uh, higher than his, we didn't talk. He loved the book. He now was on board. But from my angle, I looked at, and I appreciate you correcting me in a sense. I never looked at it as really I could fail either way. I got an answer if this wasn't the profession for me, but to not know,
Right.
that really kept me up at night.
Right. There were several people in the book. They were graduating from college, and they were getting six-figure job offers to go to Wall Street. And they decided not to take it, to move back home and work on this company that they had started. And all their friends told them they were nuts. And they all said, I figured like I could get that offer now. I can get that same job offer in a year or 2 years or 5 years. Like, I need to find out, just like you did, Rob. I need to
Right.
know if I
Right.
can.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, maybe not the kids, but I think people who've been at it for a while and out there, I hope they're doing a little soul searching right now, listening to the conversation of things that they dreamt of doing that maybe are not, they can't do right now, and where that lies in their consciousness. And do we want our children to experience that? Obviously, as an entrepreneur, I encourage my children. After they got me up off the floor when I heard about the comedian and gave me some smelling salts, I was fine. But point being, I got all behind it, and I'm very proud of him. Not because of the money that he generates, just because I have a kid that does what he wants to do, and he's happy doing it. Uh, what greater gift can we give ourselves, let alone our children? So I'm with you. Quick question. Do you journal at all or talk about journaling?
Not like some people do.
Okay. I'm only mentioning it because from my angle as an entrepreneur, because a lot of entrepreneurs, they may build a big business. A lot of them are in it one person, two-person companies. And to get feedback, it's rather challenging. So I actually have maintained a journal for decades. And it's a conversation I'm really having with myself, but I'm trying to be methodically observant in a sense. And having a journal and a time where I work on that journal allows me to provide feedback to me when I don't have anyone else to do it. So I'm curious about that angle. Think about that a little bit. I'll bet if we talk again, you'll find that more entrepreneurs than you expect are journaling in some way or another to keep evolving, even when the idea works. The lemonade stand is successful. Okay, let's never change the lemonade stand. How do we keep moving? Journaling has always helped me. Just that's my
No, I know,
story on it.
I know a lot of entrepreneurs are very serious about it. I mean, they write in their journal daily, and it's a super important part of their practice.
Yeah.
I mentioned something about something you said about the number of employees that they might have. So it was when I did the book, my older son said to me, Mom, don't just like interview the billionaires, because first of all, they're all white men. No disrespect, Rob. And second of all,
The billionaires, I'm okay hearing that, but yeah, go ahead.
second of all, that's not what we're talking about. We're not saying follow this path and your kid can become a billionaire, because the odds are low.
Yeah,
What we're saying is follow this path and you can live a life that gives you joy.
right.
And so there are people in this book who have 5 employees. There are people in this book who are, on their own, but they're still entrepreneurs. And it's so important for parents to know that your child can be successful, whether they're a comedian on their own or whether they have, 500 people working for them. If they're doing something that they love, that gives them joy, like you're saying, that's the goal.
Well, you live it as a parent. My son, is 36 years old now. He's been at it for a while, but well, let me stay on that. And I'll tell you the mindset of the parent of this young entrepreneur in a sense. I always felt that in a sense, as a parent, I had a boxer, and that was my child, and I was the corner. I was the in the ring with them, but in the corner. And I see when you see a fighter sometimes who's really getting beaten up, where's the corner? I never expect a boxer to say, "Here, hand me a towel, I'll throw it in." Uh, Really, the towel is thrown in by the corner to spare the boxer from serious harm. Now, I look at friends of mine. I was an actor in my 20s, side hustle. But as an actor, I have friends that I was acting with that are in their mid 60s that are that where it never really they're in Hollywood, but it never really happened for them. I don't look at them and blame them, but I'm wondering where the corner was. And this is I know I'm sort of arguing against now. I'm not trying to. What I'm saying is this is the tricky part for parents of entrepreneurs who are nurturing this dream. Do we grab a towel? When do we grab a towel? We leave a towel away. It's easier sometimes because those are tough conversations. How do you respond to that?
I mean, it's tough and nobody's going to succeed all the time. And I
Right.
actually, this book that you're talking about is the second edition because so many of them were doing something different between the time I first interviewed them and today. I mean, either their company failed or they sold their company or they left their company or they wanted to try something else or the company was doing something different or whatever. I mean, it's not a static, easy, 45-degree angle life.
Right.
And it just isn't. And that's what's so important about the parents' role. What you're saying, I never heard it described that way, but I love that. But every one of these people said to me, I always knew I could go home if I failed. I
Right.
always knew my family was there for me. John Chu, who's one of my favorite people in the book and become a huge movie director with Crazy Rich Asians, and he's got Wicked coming out in November. He said to me, knowing my family was always there for me and that I could go home if I failed enabled me to take risks when I was starting out that I probably wouldn't have taken if I didn't have that confidence. And I love that,
I
whether
do
you
too.
fail, whether you don't fail, knowing your family is there for you, knowing that you can, go home if it doesn't work out and regroup and start over and come up with something else. And it's nobody's going to go through life without failure
Well, what
and
kind of
being
life would that be anyway when
what
you really think
life would
about it?
that be anyway?
Yeah. Yeah. I've always defined wisdom. I found it on a red eye flight from LA to DC. Woke up at about whatever time that was in the morning when I have discovered the definition of wisdom. But I wrote it down and I still live with it. To me, wisdom consists of three things. It consists of success, failure, and a conscious knowledge of the lessons learned from each. So if
Yes.
all you've been is successful, believe me, I'd love to shake your hand. I wouldn't necessarily call you wise, but I would could consider you fortunate if all you've had is failure. Again, my heart goes out to you. Uh, but when you have a combination of both and you're able to articulate the lessons learned from each, that's why typically age creates more wisdom. We've had more experiences. But that's again, and now I'm circling back to why I tend to journal. I don't tend to, I do. Got thousands of pages of journals. Because it helps me become more observant so things don't just go flying by. I didn't really catch the lesson there. I just felt like somebody treated me poorly. Well, wait a minute. What is there a pattern here? Why did that happen?
That's
You
great.
have to be a little more methodical to get there.
That's great. Yeah. No, it's wonderful to be so introspective.
I have my weaknesses too. I'll share one more thing with you, and then I got one more question for you. I'll give you my secret sauce with well, wait a minute. So he throws in a towel, but he isn't throwing in a towel. How is this corner working with Jollis? He set his son loose to be a comedian. I'll tell you what worked for me, and I hope you're not discouraged, but this is self-disclosure. I sat my son down and I said, look, I'm nervous. I'm anxious. I'm an entrepreneur. I get it. How about this? How about when you turn 30, we sit down and I have the courage to tell you what I'm thinking, and you have the courage to listen. But if you can agree to that, I will be behind you. You always can come home. That's easy for me. I'm not angry, but I can be emotionally everything 1000% behind you, knowing that we understand that we can have a conversation. Now, Margot, did we have that talk at 30? Not really, but he was doing well, and I actually get closer, began to laugh like, well, that one looked good on paper. But it's how I processed being able to be 1000% behind my son, who was taking steps into the unknown, and I didn't care. I embraced it and loved it. But in my mind, I had a way of setting up a conversation I knew would be challenging. That was this parent's approach.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of do what you can. My dad was a professor.
Mhm.
I grew up in university towns. I didn't know anybody who hadn't graduated from college. And our older son announced after 2.5 years that he was dropping out. And
Yay!
um, my husband had just started his business, and our son had worked with him over the summer as his first salesperson and had continued trying to sell ads from his dorm room, and just wanted to do it full time. College just wasn't doing it for him. They weren't teaching him anything he wanted to learn. He was interested in business at this point. They had a requirement of calculus to take any business class, which is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. I have an MBA and I never took calculus,
That's
and
insane. That's
insane.
insane.
But in any event, so he dropped out, and I was trying to figure out, kind of like you, like, how can I be supportive of this decision that I'm really not enthusiastic about? So I said, if you can sell $1 million worth of ads, then you don't have to go back to college. So of course he did.
There you go.
So there you go.
It's actually very funny. We did that in terms of, Dad, I want to go to NYU and be in the Tisch school. And I went, if you can get yourself into NYU, I'm behind you. The little son of a gun did. It was an audition to get into the Tisch school. And he went, and we went, okay, we got an NYU tuition. Here we go. If we're going to be a theater major, well, can we be at, almost NYU? But anyway, it's funny how kids will be motivated sometimes if we can give them a goal to set. Uh, you know what? This is going to be. This might be my last question for you, but I love that story you just told, and I'm actually going to be starting a podcast for Maryland Writers Association called "A Book Finds You," because we don't find a book; it kind of finds us. That story you just told, where this became something you were living. You weren't just writing about it. You actually lived to this emotional moment. Was that part of the trigger that got you into this book?
Well, this same kid, a month before he would have graduated, had decided he was really interested in becoming an entrepreneur and wanted to meet young entrepreneurs. And so he cold called 18 entrepreneurs under the age of 30 and invited them for an all expense paid ski weekend in Utah. And they all thought it was kind of weird, but somehow he got them to come. And it was people that he just thought if he didn't do something like this, he just wasn't cool enough and they would never speak to him. And it was, people like Blake Makowski, who started Tom's Shoes, and the guys from College Humor, and the guy who started OpenAI, and I mean, like people doing like really cool stuff. And he thought it was going to be a one-off. And they all said at the end, wow, this is amazing. They'd never met anybody like themselves before. This is 2008. And they all said, we want you to do it again. And we want to bring 5 friends. And that's how Summit Series was born. Oh. And if he had stayed in college for a year and a half, not studying classes that didn't interest him, the moment would have passed him by, because by the time he got out and figured all this out, there would have been gatherings of young entrepreneurs, and he wouldn't have been the first, and he wouldn't have had the opportunity. And it actually taught me a lesson. It was like this thing that I had no idea about, that I thought was kind of crazy for him to drop out of college, crazy for him to, put this money on his credit card, to do this weekend. It turned out to be brilliant and wonderful and, life-changing. And it's an important lesson for parents, kind of like you letting your kid become a comedian. You have to let him go, and you have to appreciate that the path that worked for us back then, it doesn't necessarily work anymore. It's a different world. It's a different life. Let your kids go. Let your kids experience their joy. Let your kids find their path and realize it doesn't have to be your path, because the world has changed so much.
That's how you finish a podcast. Well said. That we refer to that as sticking your landing in the professional speaking business. Well done, Margot. Well done. The book is Raising an Entrepreneur: How to Help Your Children Achieve Their Dreams. 99 Stories from Families Who Did. If you've got an entrepreneur, you heard in this conversation, it can be one of the most amazing experiences, or it can be challenging and create some dysfunction. I think a guide in this manner would be terrific. And I'm glad you wrote the book, and I'm glad you came in here. I'm really pleased with the conversation. I know I learned a lot. And anyway, I'm grateful to have met you. And I love the book, and I love the topic that you're working with. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Rob. It was great fun.
Good. That's one of the nicest compliments you can give. I always want it to be fun for you. If you're having fun and I'm having fun, then so are our listeners. We will do it again as well as we can next time, everybody. Until then, stay safe.
Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, please rate and recommend it on iTunes, Outcast, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also get more information on this show and Rob at jollis.com.